Why do they all live in the same areas? Why do they all speak the same language?
Do you have a problem?
Why do they all do that?
Jewish people living in Finchley?
Jewish people do assimilate into British life.
No, they don't.
People living in Finchley.
They also live in Gateshead.
I lived in Stamford Hill. Hang on.
Do you have a problem with Jewish people living in Finchley?
No.
So why do you care?
Do Jewish people speak English? Do Jewish people speak English? Do Jewish people speak English? Can you answer the question? Do Jewish people speak? I answered your question. You answer mine. I must say, the past few days have made me genuinely fear for the future prospects of this country, right? I fear that the next generation are really going to have to go through the ringer, and I just can't accept that our politicians shouldn't be treated with absolute contempt for what they've done to us, to be perfectly honest.
Well, I agree, but how do we get people to assimilate, Albie?
Renee, I just find it extraordinary that someone who has mixed-race children and comes from a mixed-race family can essentially say multiculturalism has failed. Isn't your family proof that multiculturalism hasn't failed? I'm mixed-race, Lynn May is mixed-race. The mixed-race cohort is the fastest-growing cohort in this country of the different ethnic demographics. So I completely appreciate there are some issues with some communities, but to say in an absolutist way, as you basically have just suggested, multiculturalism has failed, is wrong, isn't it? Because we're both here.
I think that, and I think I mentioned this to you before, that when we had, if we go back 40, 50, 60 years, and we had the Windrush generation, and I am, as you rightly point out, part of a mixed family of that, there was complete assimilation. Because...
No, I have to stop you there. When the Windrush came here, we attempted as Caribbean people to assimilate, and we were repeatedly rejected.
Well, so you should.
We were rejected when it came to the workplace. As you saw, there were signs, no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. We were pushed at the back of the queue for healthcare, for multiple things that we should have had the right to have, because we didn't request to come here. After the Second World War, we were invited to help to rebuild Britain. So you can understand why other ethnic minorities who come here have had a look historically at how the Windrush generation were treated when we tried to assimilate. Why would any ethnic minority want to assimilate?
I think that is, I'm going to say this, I think that is nonsense, because I think maybe those things were right about how much pushback you got, but you did try to assimilate, and that happened. So
after about 30 years.
So in our family, we're living proof of that. I don't believe that the new immigrants that we have actually want to assimilate or are even trying. And I think maybe there's a religious element to that, whereas the Windrush generation were of Christians and wanted the same values, had the same values. So maybe there's a clash of culture that way. Because
from Commonwealth countries as well.
Yeah.
No, I think what's happening is, with many that are coming over, I agree, there is some who do not want to embrace British culture. But many of those who we are seeing in recent years, over the last 20 years, they're coming here oftentimes because they don't have a choice. Britain's geopolitical policy is often, along with NATO and America, we continue to invade their countries. We continue. And what happened in the 40s?
We're now talking about 2023.
So you don't think 1940s, where people are still alive from that era, hasn't had an impact of what Britain has done to the Asian continent? You don't think that has any impact?
Now?
What, so they should all come over here and treat it as a second Pakistan, is what you're saying?
No, hang on. All come...
Yes,
hang on, hang on, no. I'm not... I said some, firstly. Secondly, if you look... I said the Asian continent in terms of where India, Pakistan, Bangladesh is. If you look at many Indians, they have come here and they are the fastest growing in terms of property ownership. So you can't say, oh, you know, everywhere's ghetto, or, you know, they are not assimilating, because Indians do assimilate.
You go to Oldham, you go to Rochdale, you can actually pinpoint towns in Bangladesh and Pakistan where people have come from. Now, if you're so adamant that multiculturalism has been an overwhelming success story, why do they all live in the same areas? Why do they all speak the same language?
Do you have a problem?
Why do they all do
Jewish people living in Finchley?
Jewish people do assimilate into British life.
No, they don't.
People living in Finchley.
They also live in Gateshead.
I lived in Stamford Hill. Hang on.
Do you have a problem with Jewish people living in Finchley?
No.
So why do you care?
Do Jewish people speak English? Do Jewish people speak English? Do Jewish people speak English? Can you answer the question? Do Jewish people speak? I answered your question. You answer mine.
They do.
They
do, Darren. But for someone like you, if you go to Stamford Hill, they will refuse to speak to you. They'll call you a Gentile. They will not like your sexuality. They will not want to speak to you. And you would say hello.
Oh, well, whereas every Muslim would say, peace be upon you.
We've brought a different group of ethnic minorities, and we're asking you: do you hold the same opinion to the Orthodox Jewish community in Stamford Hill who do not even want to say hello to you?
Listen, I've got absolutely loads of Jewish friends, so I find
I've asked you about the Orthodox community.
I can't answer that question. I don't know anything about Stamford Hill Orthodox Jews.
Let's talk about Whitechapel, where the riots were this week. I have been there for 6 years as a female doctor, and I can tell you that I am not respected as a woman in this country, dressing as I do in Whitechapel and being a doctor, by many of the Bangladeshi.
How do they disrespect you?
Benjamin, we need to bring Benjamin. Sorry, Benjamin. When Lynn
May, you were there.
When Lynn May says we, and so we need to remember what happened in the 1940s and all these other things, is that not a sign that multiculturalism hasn't worked? Because nothing's happened to Lynn May. Is she been a victim?
Well, assalamu alaikum. Look. You know, I think Lynn May definitely has a point, because much like the Windrush generation, these people that are here aren't generally from the Middle East. They are from former British colonies, and they were encouraged, whether directly or culturally, to move to Britain. They were told they were part of our empire. What I would say is that this cuts two ways. It would be ridiculous to say that there aren't problems, because there are quite serious problems. If you look at East London, you know, they don't vote for the Labour Party anymore as they used to. They vote for their own candidates. Tower Hamlets isn't Labour-run. It's run by a fairly extreme Islamic leader that is, you know, many Muslims in the area find distasteful, but, you know, most of them vote for him. And so that is a problem when you get communities separating like that. And I do think that the fact they can't speak English when they've lived here for decades isn't something that you should be afraid to call out, because I mean, they should have the ability, the help to learn English. It's a hard thing to do, especially if you're middle-aged or older. But you're cut off from the world. Yeah. You can't. Often they're reliant on their husbands if they're women, and they can't help their kids at school. And so I think, you know, we shouldn't be afraid to raise those things.
But then what about British expats who go to various parts of the world and they refuse to speak the native tongue?
It's up to those other parts of the world to introduce policies to sort that out, isn't it?
But we are renowned. We are known for moving to countries and not speaking Spanish, not speaking the native language.
I think that's wrong. I agree with you on that.
Have you got what it takes to be a reasoned presenter? Well, send us a short clip of yourself to join@reasoned.uk, and we might be seeing you on this very channel very soon indeed.